Here's your host, Pat the Designer.
There's another name that was brought up in the Ian rap report, shall we say? That was cheesy, my bad. Is Khalil Herbert? I think you said right. He's the other name that has been, probably the best name on this roster that the Bears can trade. The running back value around the NFL seems to be, I guess, kind of going up, right? Cam Akers got a conditional pick, so in return for him, I think Khalil Herbert is not only a healthier running back than Cam Akers is, but also at this point in his career, a more talented running back than Cam Akers is. And I think that, not to say you could go out there and get top tier draft capital or anything like that, but I think this is a piece that if the Bears negotiate it right, there's enough teams around this league that I think are looking for running back help. They may be able to get a little bit more value than expected. What is a Khalil Herbert outlook on this Bears team look like for you?
Well, I'm not going to say he's fallen out of good graces with the staff or anything like that. I just think that they look at it historically. They used two running backs in Seattle's offense. It was Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. That's how they ran things. And that's how they're doing it here in Chicago with DeAndre Swift, who has found his groove. He's, I think, the X factor. If you had to pick one player not named Caleb Williams on offense, that's the X factor for this thing going forward and continuing the momentum it has. It's very clearly DeAndre Swift, and then Roschon Johnson behind him. You found clear-cut defined roles for your top two backs, and that kind of leaves scraps for everybody else. When Travis Homer is able to come back, what does his role become? It seems like they prioritize him even over a Khalil Herbert. So this one makes sense for him being a trade candidate, simply based on he's in a contract year. It's a very small investment for the team that would be taking him on. It's just, how do the Bears want to do this in terms of depth? Do they feel that they've got enough running back depth that if there was an injury or something that they had to overcome for a couple games or a stretch in the season, that they'd be okay parting ways with Khalil Herbert and relying on who they have, because they're just not using him. He has 16 rushing yards this season. He's been he's been active for every single game. They're just, they just don't have any.
He's on kick return.
Yeah, they don't have any use for him on offense, and that's okay if you can't find anything. What if it's a 5th round pick? I think that would be plenty to part ways with Khalil Herbert, because you're not keeping him beyond this season. You have your two guys. The writing's on the wall as far as the direction that this group is headed. I think this would be a very wise move for them to shop him as much as they can the next couple of weeks, knowing that they're set and they're in a good spot right now with their running back room.
Yeah, the fear from a lot of Bears fans is what you mentioned, right? What if somebody gets hurt? What
That's
if somebody
always a risk
goes
that you're going to have to deal with, though. Travis Homer eventually, and we know that they really like him. Eventually, he's going to be coming off IR with the finger injury. Maybe that's all the depth that they need, or how they view it. Heck, just take a look at the run game, though. Holistically, they don't use Kari Blasingame the way that they did last year in the run game. They're much more apt to, in some of the heavier formations that they go into, using offensive linemen as the fullback. I just think that they've reimagined what their backfield looks like in a way that doesn't need the sheer numbers that we may have seen previous Bears offenses have in terms of depth.
No, 100%. I think that's the thing to me, where even if you do, right, let's say you lose DeAndre Swift for a couple of games due to injury. I'm not mad at Roschon Johnson becoming the lead back in that situation. I don't think that Khalil Herbert steps in and all of a sudden is the lead back in that situation, right? I think that he has moved that far down the depth chart to where, outside of injury and things like that, you're probably not throwing Khalil Herbert in there as your main option. You're probably changing your run style. You're probably becoming more of a downhill rushing team than an outside zone rushing team if that injury were to take place. Now, if you have a situation like last season where, you lose a couple of pieces at once, then maybe you're wishing you had a Khalil Herbert. But even then, right, I watched the Bears bring in Deontay Foreman last year, and he was able to perform fine here. The Bears have guys who have been in the system. Now Foreman's on a team now; he's on the Browns right now. But the Bears have guys who have been in the system, who have been a part of these training camps, that understand how to run the football on this team and how to run the football well on this team, that they can bring in. I don't think that all is lost if you don't have Khalil Herbert back there, and that's kind of where the issue is with the running back value, that you can bring guys in off the street and they can be successful as long as you block well for them.
Yeah, and you know, for them, I feel like they're riding the momentum that they found after the first 3 games. They couldn't run the ball, and then they start to figure it out week 4. They have a rhythm. They know who goes where, in what situations, in what, you know, certain down and distances, when you're in the red zone, who you're running with on the goal line. And sometimes that is DeAndre Swift, but that's a clear-cut Roschon Johnson sort of vibe. And I think they're okay with that, like that they figured it out. And sometimes there's an odd man out. It just happens to be Khalil Herbert. But like, let's go back to training camp. We had been talking about him potentially being the odd man out because remember, Roschon Johnson was dealing with injuries. So they had to keep Khalil Herbert around. Like, would they have done this had the offense been completely healthy, or that position group been completely healthy earlier this year? Maybe. But now seems to be like the right time where you can strike for some value and get some return on a player that you're letting walk in the offseason.
If you were to go likelihood that he's on the team past the trade deadline, Nate Davis and Khalil Herbert, what percentages are you giving both of those guys that they're still Chicago Bears post-trade deadline?
Probably give Khalil Herbert a higher percentage to not be on the roster. You think about some of the running back injuries around the league. I feel like he could at least garner or net a 5th-round pick, you know, late day 3 pick for the Bears. I'll put him at a 45% chance that he's still on the Bears roster at the deadline. And I guess with Nate Davis, I know this is kind of like a cop-out. Like, I'm wondering, like, who's going to take him? You know, other teams have eyes too. 31 other teams can see that this guy has been utterly ineffective, and that's putting it nicely.
Courtney, you know how coaches think. A coach will look at Nate Davis and be like, "But he's talented. We can win with him if we can just get that extra."
You brought up Indianapolis. Like, I mean, hell, they saw him twice a year when he was in Tennessee. I'll put Nate Davis at like a 55% chance that he's on the Bears roster. It makes too much sense. I just don't know what they're going to be able to get back for him.